I think you have a big task ahead of you if the House is going to approve your nomination, because road network is everything. It opens up the country. It opens a lot to contribute to the of this nation. I have two questions. One is on the issue of, yes, I'll ask one question. It is the issue of corruption, particularly in the road sector and also in energy, where the same group of people are the ones who are contractors in one project after the other. If they are not there, the project is not there. So how are you going to deal with that? The other issue is the issue of many towns in the ASAL are still operating on generators. They are not connected to the national grid. It is both expensive and it is also environmentally not friendly because of pollution. Maybe you can say something about that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Capital flight, how are we going to address the challenge of capital flight? I think there are two forms on how we can manage this. One, localize a lot of the employment so that the labor is not foreign, where we have capacity, and as regarding really ensuring that the capital expenditure for the construction materials go to construction, it shouldn't be really that the Kenyan policy will not allow foreign investors to repatriate profit, but to the extent that the employment, the workforce is foreign, that is an area we can work on immediately to ensure that we do retain that and use to spur the economic growth in terms of circulation of that money. Surya Abdi, I think really we're going to sit down and work together as to whether we want printed estimates to come from Parliament so that we are just the implementers because we have shared equitably from the House, or whether you want to allow opening of those areas like LAPSET, for example, is a good example. Let me use this, Honorable Speaker, to explain that we need to open a new corridor. We need to open that great fertile area of
You've said
Kenya.
that 5 times.
And therefore there is need to take infrastructure to open Kenya. Russell, Saku, you do know that we are moving from Loengalani. There is funding. The project is close to Marsabit. Saku is basically Marsabit, and we are moving to Moyale, coming down to where? To Isiolo. And what we're going to do here...
Thank you very much. I think you have said the issue of Moyale and Marsabit. But the issue is, why does it take some things to be done faster in some other parts of the country, but for us, we wait as long as until the cows come home? Is it that we are in the same country or we are in different country, and what applies in one part does not apply to us? In fact, that is why I'm saying Sessional Paper number 10 of 1965 is alive and it is kicking very hard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair,
you are not born when it was written, were you?
I don't know whether we should invert the sessional paper and ensure that LAPSET will do it. I've just used LAPSET as an example to say we need to open up the unopen areas of Kenya and ensure that we do develop, ensure that we do have electricity, we do have roads, we do have water to be able to move out of the congested development corridor. It's more of a development corridor. I don't think we are going there because of the services. We just want to make the land useful, ensure that we move the population out to those areas. I just did mention in passing, as an example, Leongalani, Marsabit, and Moyale, which is on project ongoing, and we are going to make sure that we do have step down and feeders to support the people in those communities. Lapset, I think we've talked so much about Lapset. What are we going to do about corruption in roads so that the same contractors are not the same people just winning the tenders all the time? I think it is basically fidelity to the law. There is a procurement process. I go to the ministry, and I'm going to ensure that we do streamline whatever is not right. We do things according to the rules of the game and ensure that we do build capacity. When I reviewed the functions as per the order of what functions do sit in roads, I do see the mechanical transport fund. I do see all those services where we do have the registration of technologists and engineers, and we can really improve capacity of our own local people. There's no reason why today, 60 years after independence, we are not competing with those multinational contractors, to the extent that it's not an EXIM funding and it's an export credit chairman where they are following, their contractors are coming to spend their money. All the local contracts which are funded through the exchequer, there's no reason why we don't have capacity.
A similar point, nominee, there's a Kenyan who sent me a message that locals cannot possibly compete with big Chinese contractors for the reason, when you give a Chinese contractor, I don't know if it is true, the government gives them free maram pits, free quarry pits. Sometimes you allow them to bring equipment duty-free. They exempted from VAT. They bring cement from Indonesia and Malaysia, half the price of our cement. How do they compete with locals? Somebody has sent a message for me to ask you, if you get to the ministry, assuming you'll be approved, how will you correct this? Because you can't tie somebody's hands at the back and tell him to fight fairly with a person whose hands are free.
Chair, and that's when I said EXIM, you know, EXIM banks are export credit banks which are meant to support the investors or the contractors of a particular country to do business abroad. So that really we are competing with a supported competitor where the EXIM facility do give them that competitive advantage in terms of, because the purpose of an EXIM is to export services, to export capital, but follow and employ that capital using their own personnel. That's why when we get a facility from Japan, it's more of the Japanese who do the job. When we get a support from China, it's more of the Chinese who follow that money. We need to sit down together and look at how do we ensure then that the local contracts which are funded by the Kenya government are not exported to support the foreign capitals. So it's something that we must be deliberate. We must be deliberate about that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much, nominee. I've listened to you, but I just want to ask you a more of a constitutional requirement. Kera, Kura, Kena came into play before the Constitution 2010. Then after Constitution 2010, we got the devolved governments, whereby the total confusion kicked in. As this House, if approves you, I want to hear what national are you going to use? Are you going to continue doing the same, or we are going to go back to the drawing board to establish a roads authority which caters for equal distribution of roads? Whereby, if you look at right now, Mr. Davis, after the current rains, even the existing roads have extremely been damaged. And I know very well, You talk to Kera, you talk to Kura, you talk to county governments, you talk to Kena, no budget to redo those roads. Not even, we are crying for new ones, the existing ones, which can spur this economy by transportation of goods. There is a problem. I want just to hear from you as the new CS once approved. What is your vision on this lacuna of the Constitution?
Go ahead, Davis.
Speaker, I think Stephen makes a profound point, because I look at Kenya Road Boards Act 1999, I look at KENA 2007, I look at KERA 2007. So the legislation was done before the new constitution. We need in line to harmonize and ensure that the articles, or rather the law is in line with the constitution. But more importantly, Chair, again, the same question from Mule, is that we raised about 70, last year or the current year, we raised 79.9 billion on the road maintenance levy. And we do see fairly well-maintained highway courtesy of this road maintenance levy. There should be no reason why the Kera portion or the Kura portion for the urban, as much as it is supporting the national highways to maintain good infrastructure, does not cover all the areas of Kenya equitably, to the extent that a road is classified, it belongs to that class. There is, again, reclassification is another thing we need to talk to. But certainly, with the funding in road maintenance, we'll need to sit down together and ensure that we are able to maintain all our roads. I think the support from the road maintenance levy, to me, it seems to be fairly good. And to the extent that it seems to just be a distribution challenge, and we'll need to sit down and work together on that. Thank you.
Naisula.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to put it to the nominee that in case he's approved, the docket that he's going to, Kenyans perceive it to be very lucrative. I don't know why, but that is the feeling out there. And one thing is that Kenyans, we have an insatiable appetite for kickbacks, you know, in most of the things. And I'm aware that in the last regime, we lost Qatar making JKIA their hub to Rwanda. And most of the time, the people who come to our country wanting to invest here, they say it is because of kickbacks.
You're saying we lost it because of kickbacks?
I'm saying because
Qatar.
I'm saying because the allegations that mostly when investors want to come to Kenya, we ask them for crazy kickbacks. And people then leave the country, they go to countries like Ethiopia, to Rwanda, and if they invested here, I am reliably informed that they were going to do for us another, the second terminal. We would, you know, so instead of the kickback, we would have gotten investment. They would have helped us with infrastructure of even the existing one. I want to just ask.
Chair, on a point of order. You know, we're also getting information that we didn't know. Honorable Lesuda said in the last regime, did she mean the outgoing cabinet secretary who the honorable...
No, the previous... That is not a regime.
I thought she meant the regime in the ministry.
No.
So is the outgoing, the former regime?
Yes. I know where you're going with that. I am a very objective legislator. Yeah. And so allow me to ask this question. Where you were the chair budget. Anyway, let me carry on. And so, in case you find yourself in this office, and we have people, for example, like Emirates, we have people like Etihad, or others who would want to come with the same offer. to our country. I would like to get your view on what you think of such partnerships, which for me I think would be beneficial to our country. It is on the same thing that I've been pushing for the non-motorized transport, where we take care of our cyclists, where we take care of our pedestrians. We cannot be having roads for the minority who are driving, and then our people who are walking and cycling, who are the majority, are squeezed at the corner of the road, and we are killing them every other day on bicycles. But the argument is that the money is not enough for it, because we have enough money for kickbacks when you get a road, but you don't have money to do the footbridge and also to do the pedestrian. Lastly, is that I just want to pick your view on loans versus development. You know, we're asking for roads, and then where do we get it? You know, your view on whether, you know, we'll still have capacity to do loans. Mr. Speaker, allow me, this is a question from someone whom I think it's an important question, where someone is asking that I ask the nominee, in case you find yourself in the office and you find out that the start times, which monitors SGR in real time from it actually, and he's confirming that he has seen it, SGR monitors, start times monitoring SGR in real time from its headquarters in Beijing. When you visit Star Times headquarters in Beijing, there is a room with big screens mounted on the wall, monitoring every real time. Even if this infrastructure was funded by a loan from China, why should monitoring be done in Beijing?
I thank you, Speaker. I think mine will be in the form of a comment. And the nominee, I don't know whether you know the area you are going. The area you are going is a people's area, is MP's area. It's almost like a market, because roads touch on everybody in this country, and therefore it's a critical thing. So my only comment to you, nominee, hearing from a lot of members of parliament who told me to bring up this issue, is about your availability, about your accessibility. People cannot get you in the office. People cannot call you or receive their calls, particularly MPs. And therefore, I think you need, I don't know what you will tell this committee. If you are approved to become a CS, please go and work on that part of your skill so that you can be able to be accessible to as many leaders as possible. Thank you, Chair.
That comment, which I hope the nominee, if favored, will take into account. Gikaria, the last one.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman, sorry. Kenya is strategically located for purposes of, the landlocked countries, Uganda, Rwanda. Your predecessor, when he was here 20 months ago, there was this aspect of delay on the road by the way bridges, police roadblocks, the bumps on our road, and so many other issues that occurred to that. As you've said, told us about the transport management system, where as an individual using a personal car, I might divert and go, but trucks will not have that choice. They will just have to stick because there are those way bridges, and that delaying the traffic to our neighboring countries to a point that there was a time they were threatening to use other routes for them to be able to. In line of that, maybe what policy have you put in place even to address the first phase of addressing the great North Road, that we were going to have a dual carriage from Rironi all the way to Mau Summit, and then thereafter onwards all the way to Busia. So maybe, and by that time, the minister had indicated that the dual carriage would be starting, I think, in a year ago, but it has not started. Secondly, the economic survey of 2024. In 2023, the road carnage accidents 9,960 accidents, 4,324 lives lost, 10,762 serious injuries, 7,799 minor injuries. What policy are you going to bring in to address the road carnage and road accident in the country? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Davis?
Thank you, Speaker. Let me start with Naisola's lucrative nature. I think I did say, Chair, with the risk of repeating myself, that if you have a good framework, a good term sheet, which does stipulate the boundaries under which we are willing to allow investors to leverage and get reasonable return on their investment. And because the PPP Act of 2021 do allow competition, even when it's a privately initiated project, if before the closure of the project, Qatar comes and puts in another privately initiated project, and if the rates are more competitive, it should be good for our economy. And therefore, it's just a question of what I earlier said, fidelity and leadership, fidelity to the law and leadership at the ministry, so that even as we run PPP, can we run PPP in a more competitive way and ensure that even as we seek these people to come in because of the very tight headroom, that we are not able to develop some of these infrastructure facilities to grow our country, we do have a very clear return on investment that is allowable. In the energy sector, we only allow 12.5% for every power generator on internal rate of return on equity. We do not allow a share debt equity of more than 25.75 because debt is cheap. And we really should be able to work on an economic model. And if we get a second investor who is more competitive, because the PPP Act allows competition, we should be able to address that and ensure that we give the best for our country. In terms of, I don't know whether I'm too brief on that, but let me go to the non-motorized. Yes, we need to have pedestrian-friendly roads. When those of us who like running from the Rift even look for where to jog in the morning, we find that we are either running with the vehicles on the road, and therefore, Chairman, we can have more people even walking to work if we have got good pedestrian, really side walks, and even support the health for those of us who like to walk or run in the morning or in the evening. The loans versus development, there's a very interesting scenario I found while reviewing the notes on this loan versus development. When we borrow in the energy sector, we do subsidiary agreements to on-lend the loan to a place like Kengen, and therefore they repay the full loan. When we did a loan to the railways, they took the asset and left the liability at the treasury. And so these are some of the things we need to see whether we can really have our state agencies working more profitably, having the asset and having the liability, and not just having the asset, sweating the asset and making losses while the liability is being paid by the National Treasury. It's a bit, some of the things we'll need to look at more critically. But more importantly, on the area of the railway, the ports, can we build synergy? Let me just give a very quick thoughts, which I look at the fact that they are all under the ministry. We get the port with its challenges of clearing the container. The container then moves to Mariakani to be loaded onto an SGR, which is under different management. It comes to ICD, which is a port facility. And whether it's going to ICD Nairobi or going to ICD Naivasha, it is changing hands, and the slag in those changeovers. And the fact that today, for what I've reviewed, the Kenya Railways is handling 10 to 20% of the cargoes. Does not add up. We need more synergy between Kenya Railways.
Is that a lamentation, or you are preparing to tell us what you...
I'm answering one of the questions which was asked in terms of how are we going to have a more seamless working together as a roads and transport ministry and being able to build synergy.
How will you do it if approved? That is the big question.
That is the answer, Chair. I'm saying we really will work to ensure that they work more closely together, and we should be able to grow the luggage coming out of the port to the railway and being able to make those kind of profits rather than transporting. Chair, let me use again an example and allow me to do this. Pipeline, which is a transport facility, when Uganda decided to borrow from Kenya, the G2G, and Zambia is currently borrowing, we did not allow them to use the road. We said we've built a pipeline. We cannot be stressing our roads when there is a pipeline for transporting products. So my point is we really need to build synergy in the transport sector so that
an excellent idea.
We have an better interworking between Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways, and the intermodal kind of traffic movement, where when you are in the UK, if you bought a train ticket, it is used on the bus and it is used on the taxi. There is no reason why we cannot quickly move to that. The next, which I want to answer very quickly, is the control center for our SGR, which is out there. There is no reason why we do not. We have a national control center for our electricity movement of electrons across the whole country. And when you sit in Dandora National Control Center, even some of the challenges and where the blackout is coming from is visible in one room like this. There is no reason why we cannot work together with our partners and ensure that that employment is shifted to Nairobi and we can watch our SGR from Nairobi, from Mombasa, from Mariakani, or wherever the National Control Center will be. Because you make a very good point and a bit of land.
Just a comment, don't belabor it.
I learned a bit in REREC that I also saw a few, so I'll operate a fairly good open door policy for the members of parliament. Gikaria, the landlocked, there is no reason why we cannot afford to play that game. Mombasa competition does not come from within. It comes from Dar, it comes from Djibouti. We need to be fast. Otherwise, we'll see our cargoes going to Dar. We'll see them going to Djibouti. They are trying to build the other port, Tanga, in up Dar es Salaam. So we need to be competitive. We cannot afford not to open the road quickly to ensure that the movement of the outbound goods do give competitive advantage to our neighbors and that they don't have to go to competition outside Kenya, because that's how we lose jobs, that's how we lose opportunities. Economic survey for accidents, Chair, I'm aware that we really, in this day and age of technology, and like I said, when we have the electronic licenses and all the cameras that I'm told they are being installed in various points on the roads, we should be able to address this. Let me look at that and see how more in this day and age we can employ technology to reduce accidents, to revalidate the drivers, to have, I'm told, the inspection, the vehicle inspection center, we have got so many, only 2 are working. And we are still training our drivers on the traditional manual board. There is so much room for improvement. We cannot afford to be losing lives in this day and age through careless road accidents, which we can monitor and bring and reduce that mortality significantly. Thank you, Chairman.
The Rironi Mau Summit Road, dual carriage.
I've also answered that, Chairman, because Rironi Mau Summit is one exit into.
That is the road that Junet asked.
Into Uganda?
And it was
absolutely.
Nominee, a few people have asked me to put the following to you. Tanzania is doing an electric SGR. Will you speed up the extension of the SGR from where it is to Malaba, Kampala, arriving ahead of Tanzania so that you secure your cargo through Mombasa? Number 2, Kenyan from, I believe, Meru region. Will you consider upgrading the Nithi-Kila Bridge so that you avoid accidents? Another one says, will you build toilets along highways to stop Kenyans from defecating in our trees and forests. Another one says, were you involved in the saga of the oil tanker concerning Jerry? Another one says, what affirmative action will you do for local contractors? And will you enforce the law on local content in contracts with foreigners?
Let me read another one from somebody who says, ask Honorable Chirchir whether there is any PPP deal that he signed in the Ministry of Energy, and if there is one, what are its terms?
I have one here too.
Yes, the last one.
Can you ask the cabinet nominee, David Chirchir, why there is huge cases of electricity brokers hacking smart meter codes in the country to destabilize the electric grid and to cut power bills?
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
One person has sent me, Ministry of Transport gives PSC requirements for engineers, hence they only advertise engineers registered by EBK, and they don't include KETRAB, which is Kenya Technology Registration Board, who are graduates in Bachelor of Technology in Civil Engineering. What will he do about
Take
that?
5 minutes to respond to those.
Chair, maybe he could also respond to one.
Yes.
The one for the toilets, I also got it. What he will do to deal with, he's asking, CS Chirchir. The first one was on Kera, on the stalled contracts that you answered. How is he going to avoid loss of public funds that is paid to contractors as interest accrued as a result of delayed payments of IPCs?
One more, Mr. Speaker.
This one of toilets is very serious.
This one says, as the CS, both LAPSET to Uhuru government have allocated 10 billion out of the 18 billion meant for Lamu Garissa section. The Kenya Kwanza government has so far allocated only 35 million for the last 3 financial years. Right?
We have one more nominee to come. It's 5:45.
SGR, we have a development fund called Railway Development Fund, which collects about 36 billion annually. This is an area where we need to quickly look at how to secure that fund so that we don't use for some maintenance or some small developments, and therefore be able to, with 36 billion revenue, which by law is designated for development, we can borrow against it and be able to support the Naivasha, Kisumu, Malaba very quickly. And I'm aware that Uganda are trying to really work with us so that we can get more goods and even support the kind of cargo, the volume cargo, and make Kenya Railways more profitable. So that's an area which, like you said, with competition coming from outside Kenya, we need to quickly work on that, Speaker. Nithi Killer Bridge, I honestly thought it had been done, so it will be on the priority list. It cannot be called a killer bridge. It's not a good name. The toilets along the highway is very progressive. I don't think it's expensive to locate toilets in between towns. And like you said, it's something we can look at. It's not an expensive investment on our major highways. And therefore, you see the modern petrol stations in Total, Shell, Ruby's, having very nice modern toilets. We can be able to support that investment and ensure that on our highways we do have very good facilities for people to. It could be nice in terms of even people stopping and stop driving under pressure and causing accidents. It could actually reduce accidents by certain levels. Njeri oil deal was disposed in court. It was a very interesting case of somebody making a claim on a cargo that left Saudi Aramco, and that went to court. Chair, nobody had involvement in Kenya. It was just some fraudster who wanted to be smart, because I think all the papers were just photocopied, and we did support the investigation and close the case because it was really presenting a very bad picture under the G2G, and it was bound to interfere with the supply of oil products into Kenya if we didn't work hard together to close that issue. Affirmative action on our local contractors is something I've talked to. It is a very topical issue. It's something, it's coming from outside, it's coming from within here. We need to work on that and ensure that our local contractors are supported and there is no capital flight, because we should be employing our local Kenyans. The law on local content is something that really, with the clinker industry, really working on the kind of duties that we have levied on imported clinker. We should be able to use more of our cement. It is very popular. We are getting more of investment. Industry could easily be growing from 7% GDP to a higher number if we support the local content. It can support our industry and goes further to answering the question of employment of our Kenyans. PPP on energy signed. Let me say, PPP on energy, I would actually dare say all IPPs are PPP. They are. Only that the law came much later. But the power purchase agreement that is signed, you develop a power plant, we sign to buy your product for 20, 25 years. We give you a letter of support. We give you now we are using the ATIDI. We've got a very innovative trade insurance which can help us to forestall having to address the headroom of borrowing on or liability on government balance sheet on what we call the partial risk guarantee. So we are now using the ATIDI, Africa Trade Insurance Facility, and therefore, yes, there are many PPPs in energy. We have a very clear framework under EPRA, like I said, a term sheet, which dictates what is allowable to be able to have the tariffs right. There's a long waiting list of power generators. There's a long waiting list of people who want to build transmission networks. And unless we get the correct return on investment in line with our term sheets as developed by EPRA, it would be expensive to the economy. So we are working on that. Yes, we have a number of them, but there are none signed lately. You do know, Chairman, that Parliament did put a moratorium on power generation. And we're beginning to have a concern on whether we will not be load shedding by 2027, because I said we're currently developing power for 2027, 2028. And with a moratorium sitting in Parliament, we could be looking at a load shedding unless we work together. So that's just a side comment. Interest on delays. Interest, what were the interest on delay? I didn't get that properly.
Asking. You're asking what you are doing to, these SMSs are too many.